This is registered mail from the Mary Sue. Before we take a look inside, why don't I give you some context? Sam Maggs is the former editor of the Mary Sue. She really doesn't like men's rights activists. When she found out I was attending Calgary Expo 2015, I can only assume she decided she really wanted to get rid of me. She initially tweeted out her displeasure at us being at the expo, specifically at a panel, to the event hashtag, but the organizers did nothing in response. Then Sam Maggs' friend and collaborator in Toronto, half a continent away, suddenly decided to tweet to her followers a picture of my booth that she could have only gotten from someone at the convention, with a Gamergate flag that said, quote, "Stand against censorship." That caused a Twitter storm, a full 12 tweets. The next morning, my badge was confiscated, and I was given 15 minutes before the doors opened to tear down an art installation that had taken me half a day to put up, and to do it without the tools that I needed, and without leave to go get a trolley, while I was being laughed at by onlookers. In the process, I lost equipment and some of my artwork was destroyed. Meanwhile, Sam Maggs arranged for a hit piece to be published in the Mary Sue alleging that I defrauded the convention and harassed panelists. The previous day, I had attended a panel called Women into Comics about female comics creators, and when the panelists mentioned wanting to create a dialogue between men's rights activists and feminists, I spoke up and said this. Would you like us to field that question? Would you like us to field that question? Because I am a men's rights activist, so you can hate on me. The reason why I don't like feminism is because you promote this idea that women are defined by being victims. If you look at the context of all of your issues, men also face considerable problems as well. And they need to be brought into the story, and not just for men's sake, because this hides men's vulnerability, also for the sake of challenging the notion that women are defined as victims. A few minutes later, when they told me they were moving on, I shut up and sat down. This was framed as harassment. And on my website, I wrote, in April of this year, the Honey Badgers planned to put on a booth at the Calgary Comics and Entertainment Expo. We planned to infiltrate nerd culture cunningly disguised as their own. Each of us has been carefully crafting a persona of nerdiness through decades of dedication to comics, science fiction, fantasy, comedy, games, and other geekery, waiting for this moment, our moment to slip among the unaware. Once there, we will start distributing the totalitarian message that nerd and gamer culture is perfectly wonderful just as it is and should be left alone to go its own way. This was framed as an intention to defraud the convention through misrepresentation. Unfortunately for that particular narrative, the booth was registered under Honey Badger Brigade, which was in the convention guide, and all of our badges had the name Honey Badger Brigade on them, and my contract was registered to my legal name, so I defrauded the convention by going as myself. These unfounded falsehoods about me were then blasted across Western Canada by establishment media, just uncritically repeated. In 2016, I sued the Calgary Expo for breach of contract and the Mary Sue for injurious falsehood, sort of the small claims version of defamation. By that time, Sam Maggs had left the Mary Sue. In October of last year, I received an email from a viewer. At the time, I didn't respond to it because I just didn't want to get into it. But I'll read it now. It's from Jay. Sam Maggs is trending like crazy at the moment, as a vast majority of Star Wars fans are pissed that she was hired as a writer for the upcoming Knights of the Old Republic remake. This is a golden opportunity, with millions of fans being very frustrated with this and eagerly looking for anything that will put her in a bad light. And I can't think of a better example of doing just that than bringing attention to her abhorrent treatment of you. So this should be a relatively easy request, and hopefully as a bonus it will contribute to her being taken off the project, which is a win-win really for gamers and for her perpetual state of victimhood in which she so obviously thrives. And if she's not fired, at least we can witness the extreme injustice of you being deplatformed over 20 tweets and her not being deplatformed amidst a shitstorm of 1 million outraged Star Wars fans being lost on her, and laugh. 12 tweets. I was deplatformed over 12 tweets. The funny thing about all of this is that when Sam Mag started up her original tweet trying to frame us as dangerous, I did a stream with myself and some other badgers. During that stream, they called Sam Mags a cunt in the context of having experienced false accusations from women like her. I said, paraphrasing, "She isn't the woman that did that to you. You're not being fair." I defended her against being called a cunt who makes false accusations. I appreciate your well wishes, Jay, and your support, but why would I want to deplatform Sam Mags? Why would I want to do that? Why would I want to do what was done to me to another person, even if it was the person that did it to me? It's just more ugliness. Our judgment was delivered over the phone. After my small claims court case was drug out to 3 in-person hearings over 2 years, we didn't even get the respect of being told in person. When the scheduled call came, I sat in my garage because I was too scared to listen. It's moments like those where you feel every second of your life, and I misjudged how much time had passed when I knocked on the door of my house to find out if the judgment had been concluded. My husband, who looked disorientated and helpless, like he was in free fall, met me and told me it was still ongoing. His expression has haunted me. In 2018 and 2019, he was battling bouts of anxiety every day. I dragged him into this fight and he suffered for it. There are signs he's had a heart attack, although we don't know for sure because the Canadian medical system is a joke. But as soon as I saw his face, I knew we'd lost. In August 18, the judge ruled for the defendant. The Mary Sue requested the judge award them $100,000 in court costs. In August 2019, the judge finally decided how much I would have to pay the Mary Sue for having attempted to sue them. Nearly 4 years after I started this whole thing. So much for swift justice. Why did I do that? Why did I do this? Why did I do this fight? Because I was asked to. There were people who were just despondent over the fact that the media lies about men's issues advocates and about Gamergate, about these people who want nothing more than that men be paid attention to as well and are willing to fight for that, and who want the consumer respected by a media that's honest. And to be framed as being awful and inhuman and terrorists because they simply went against what the media said. I can't stand it when people are lied about and they are presented as being bad when they're not. When they are good people, as far as I could tell, they were good people. They wanted simple things, forthright things, honest things. Things that were totally legitimate, totally acceptable to anybody who has a brain and a heart. And they're constantly being lied about. So why did I fight back? Because it wasn't about them lying about me. It was about them lying about people who care about transparency and ethics and journalism and people who care about men. That's the only reason. And I got nothing out of this except stress and sickness and hurting my fucking husband. We have grounds for appeal because the judgment itself was incomplete. If you were paying attention to the proceedings in the Depp versus Heard trial, you probably noticed how the judge very carefully instructed the jurors to make their judgment in line with the law. She outlined the 3 components of defamation. 1 was the statement made with malice, which can include negligence. 2, was it untrue? 3, did it result in a loss of money? I imagine Depp might have even been happy with a finding against him because he couldn't prove loss, as long as the jury correctly ruled on 1 and 2. It was malicious and it was a lie, telling the world that he had been lied about and confirming the pain that he had suffered. I would have been. But the judge didn't follow that basic requirement of a judgment. He wrote an op-ed. It was like the Mary Sue wrote it for him. There's a lot of speculation, well, not much anymore, as to why this happened. Some say it's because my legal agent was weak, but to be honest, the lawyer for the defendant could have given Elaine Brederhoft a run for her money. I was up against a corporation that brings a lot of revenue into Calgary and a media that does not admit when it's wrong. Now it's becoming more and more apparent that I was also up against an activist Canadian judiciary that's bought and sold. The next step in my appeal would cost another $10,000, and that doesn't cover the total cost to me in terms of my time and stress. Not to mention it would be pursued with the hope of finding a unicorn, an honest Canadian judge that just applies the law. And for 5 years, while I fought, I stopped writing. A legal case is exhausting. I took on what amounts to an unpaid second job in order to do this fight, and I had no emotional energy left for storytelling or for writing or for comics, which is even more labor intensive. I had nothing left for anything but this fight. As a creator, I see Gamergate and all of the associated movements, ComicGate, Sad Puppies, Tabletop, as being about reasserting the covenant between creator and customer, between the storyteller and audience. Don't put your ego first and preach and posture and virtue signal. Put your readers first. Make them happy, make them sad, make them afraid, thrill them, surprise them, above all, entertain them. That's respect. And write what's in you to write. That earns respect. In 2020, with nothing left to fight or organize, and Brian safely out of Chicago, thank you very much for that, I fell back into writing. My friend Mike Stephenson, Dr. Ranwerkamp, said recently that a performer has a hole in their soul that can only be filled with applause. I have a hole in my soul that can only be filled with telling stories. I'm sure you figured out what this is by now. There's no need to open it. By the time I record this, it's done and over. The Mary Sue has their money. I'm not going to ask for anybody to help me out with this because this is the one thing in this fight that I've done for myself. Throw in the towel. Although I might change my mind if Calgary Expo comes after me. Sam Meggs has destroyed my reputation with anyone who still trusts the media, which is traditional publishing, and she and her collaborators have gotten me banned from most conventions in Canada, possibly worldwide, considering who's acquired Calgary Expo. And in those 5 years, I wasn't writing. Sam Meggs published several books and has written Call of Duty stories, and now will be writing for Knights of the Old Republic. Sam Meggs played the game and she's won big time. But there's one thing she hasn't won: the respect of her audience. Thank you for helping me fight back. I'm proud that I did, although the outcome didn't end up being what we wanted it to be. And I'm sorry for whatever failings in me that led to that outcome. I've had to accept that I had never done anything like this before, and I did my best. Sometimes your best isn't good enough, and that's just the way it goes. But you still have to give it. During the panel, I also said this.
Don't say you're a victim of this culture. Say that you build what you want to see.
It's time I took my own advice. I need to build what I want to see in the world. I want to make people happy with my writing. When I went to the Calgary Expo, I went because I love the feeling of opening someone's mind or convincing them to give your story a shot. Now, that feeling that you've connected with them and they're hearing what you have to say and they're interested in the story that you have to tell. That's why I went. Because that's the best feeling in the world. Right now, the world needs more happiness and more creators who write because they love telling stories, not because they want to tell people what to think. And we are done. Yep. Check successfully deployed. And now we are going to take him, hey Skippy, him to the dog park.
You're caught up in that line here. This is like an old Walt Disney cartoon right now.
Thank you for your kind attention, and do consider clicking on this secret postscript if you'd like to find out what I'm up to, and if you'd like to help me with it. Have a lovely day.